afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our webinar titled Myth Busted, Why DIY Financial Planning Might Not Be Enough. Thank you to everybody that has submitted questions in advance. We will be addressing as many as possible that are relevant to today's topic of discussion in the time that we have available, and all other questions will be considered for future discussions. Our presenters today is Zanele Zungu and Sean Johnson. Zanele is a certified financial planner with a deep passion for financial empowerment and innovative financial solutions. She is dedicated to positively impact lives through wealth creation, risk management, and asset management. While completing her studies, Zanele started her career managing UK-based private client portfolios. She then moved into asset management, specializing in investments, risk, and performance analysis. Driven by her passion for people, financial empowerment, and literacy, Zanele transitioned into financial advisory, seeking to improve her knowledge, to impart her knowledge through independent and comprehensive financial solutions. Sean Johnson is a certified financial planner and fiduciary practitioner. He recently completed the Financial Modeling and Valuation Analysis certification. Sean brings with him expertise in financial planning, fiduciary and tax matters, estate planning, and investment property. He seeks to utilize his extensive knowledge to strengthen client relationships and offer valuable support in financial decision making. His primary focus is to empower clients by helping them gain a comprehensive understanding of their financial needs and guiding them towards achieving their goals through education and mentorship. Thank you to our two speakers today. I hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you so much for having us, everybody, and welcome to our presentation. I'm going to start sharing on my side, and Sean is going to introduce the topic of discussion.
Great. Thank you, Rana, for this opportunity to prepare this presentation. I think it's quite an important topic, which I think is the reason why we have so many attendees this afternoon. So as Rihanna had mentioned, the introduction for this presentation is, in today's digital age, many people believe that online tools and financial apps can fully equip them to manage their finances independently. But is relying on DIY financial planning truly sufficient to safeguard your financial future? The overview of the topics that we're going to go through in this presentation, Zanele and myself, will be the common myths about DIY financial planning, and secondly, the importance of professional financial advice.
So the first thing we'll explore is what a myth is and what makes us believe myths. So myths are obviously falsehood. It's statements that are made. Sometimes they seem true, but a lot of the time they actually lack factual information and evidence. Now, what makes us believe myths in the first place? We as people believe myths for a variety of reasons. And some of the main causes could be social and cultural influence. We find a lot of the time myths can be a little bit more emotional appealing. And sometimes people believe myths due to a lack of information or education. We find that a lot of the time people tend towards myths due to storytelling power. We as humans are wired for stories, and myths are usually compelling and symbolic, and sometimes emotionally resonant, making them easier to remember and pass on than dry, hard facts. We as people tend towards falsehood, where the truth or reality may be uncomfortable. And so what we see in our finances is that cognitive biases and emotional biases play an integral role in the average human being's decision making. If you think to yourselves, you think of a time when you made a decision that felt right, only to realize later that it wasn't based on facts, but rather emotion. Do you ever justify your spending, calling it an investment when you know that it isn't? Have you ever trusted someone more just because they looked confident or sounded very sure of themselves? And so behavioral finance explores how people feel and react. We don't always make logical money decisions. Emotions and habits play a very big role. And so what we see in this diagram is the decisions influenced by our biases, which influence the risk perception that we have and the investment outcomes of our choices.
And I think one of the biggest examples of behavioral biases is what we learn from our parents. As you grow up and you interact with your parents and how they discuss money and how they interact with money throughout their life really does impact how you see money and your behavior towards money. So if your parents have had negative experiences or if they've not understood the investment process, you tend to stay clear of that because you feel that it's not maybe the best decision without actually exploring it. And that's what hinders some of the financial decisions that are made as people. And unfortunately, that can have impacts in the future when it comes to financial planning for yourself and for your family.
Absolutely. And so it is through financial planning that we are able to provide holistic financial considerations by really tying together behavioral finance with technical finance and nuance to divide holistic financial plans. But what today is about is really exploring the most common myths that actually misinform people and their decision making, which have major impacts on the financial outcomes of their financial health. So the first myth we'll explore is I save money. I can save money on professional fees by doing it myself. Sean?
Yeah, so the first myth is the most common one that we find is a lot of people feel that they can save money by do it themselves. And the reality is that we have to look at the hidden costs and potential mistakes that one can make, because ultimately you are relying on your own decisions, your own research, and your own behavioral biases that could result into potential mistakes. Of course, the other risk with DIY investing is the lack of knowledge and experience. If you don't understand the investment landscape in terms of asset classes, different investment products, the tax implications, there could be potential mistakes there. And of course, the advantages of having a professional manager investments is that they can give you expert guidance, help diversify your portfolio and implement strategies to mitigate risk as well as maximize returns.
Absolutely. So just tying into that, it's important for one to understand the balancing of the risks involved. Unfortunately, this is not something that one typically explores when DIY investing, because it's a nuance that is understood by investment professionals and financial planning professionals. The likes of risk tolerance, risk appetite, and risk capacity. So your tolerance speaks to how much risk you are emotionally comfortable with. Your appetite speaks to how much risk you're willing to take to pursue your goals. And your capacity speaks to how much risk you can afford to take based on your financial situation. In essence, risk management is not just about avoiding losses, it's about making informed decisions and achieving financial goals while ensuring your financial security, which is a very common oversight achieved by DIY financial planning.
The next thing we need to look at is we need to look at the long-term gains versus short-term pleasures. Sorry, I just been meeting someone. And one of the key things that we look at with regards to financial planning in general is you need to have a long-term view when it comes to saving your money and saving towards an investment goal. And we tend to see that a lot of people want to have instant gratification. When they start working, they want to spend all of their salary. They want to purchase assets when they're young, when they could have saved to build up a sustainable wealth that could create further assets for them in the future. And this diagram just speaks to the risks of people following the route of instant gratification, because the more that you delay your wealth, the harder it's going to be for you to accomplish that as you get older. And one of the famous sayings by Zig Ziglar is, be careful not to compromise what you want most for what you want now. And what people want most now is they want to have the financial freedom. And in order to do that, you need to have a clear path in mind so that you can save towards a future where you can achieve financial freedom. But if you're going to be looking at instant gratification, then that's something that's going to be very difficult to accomplish as you get older.
Absolutely. So in tying into delaying your gratification, this graph basically illustrates how much one can gain by staying the while. So instead of falling into the traps of delayed gratification and what is trending and a hot topic for the time being, one needs to stick to strategy, which can be provided by a professional financial planner. It is also demonstrative of the power of diversification and strategic asset allocation.
Great. So the second myth we're going to be looking at is I have access to all the information that I need. This is the second most common myth that we find. And with the abundance of financial information available online, some believe that they can make informed decisions without professional help.
Absolutely. The reality is that there's a vast amount of information and it is overwhelming. Furthermore, not all information that is provided to you is necessarily true. So it's important to seek professional guidance when consuming the information, that you can actually unpack it and gain the necessary understanding to make informed decisions. So just because you have the access to the information, it doesn't mean all of it is necessarily for your consumption.
And also we could see that through studies, 60% of individuals feel overwhelmed with the amount of information online. With social media and all the different websites that provide information on markets, a lot of people take in too much information and they get confused, and also they start to create their own biases on investments based on the information that they absorb. One of the things we like to cover also with regards to access to social media is to be very careful where you get your financial advice and information. One of the things that we have picked up in recent years has been the termed coin influencer, which is basically someone that gives advice or promotes products on a social media platform, and they don't really have any accountability for the information that they are sharing and the consequences thereof. And this is a snippet from The Citizen, which is from April this year, where the FSCA has given a warning that they're going to be probing influencers that are giving advice online to determine whether or not they actually are legitimate sources. And another common trend with regards to the online community is that there is the crypto trading that is now becoming a very common space for people to start invest their money. And as a result, there are a lot of crypto traders that are taking money without actually having the correct knowledge to do so. Another study that was done was through the CFA Institute. They prepared their own article, which is called the FinInfluencer Appeal, Investing in the Age of Social Media. And essentially what they did was they did a survey where they covered the various platforms for social media, and they covered guidance, promotion, and recommendation. And as you can see here in Exhibit 5, that the most common platform when it comes to recommendation and guidance would be TikTok. And that, of course, creates a lot of problems if you are relying on information from TikTok. And the next slide will explain why. So on another,
So what we find is that 90% of financial advice shared on TikTok is coming from influencers without any sort of accreditation in the financial industry. And what this basically means is that there is no accountability or regulation. They face no legal consequences for giving the bad advice. And by they, I mean those that don't necessarily that aren't bought to book and identified as such. Secondly, the advice is oversimplified because a platform like TikTok only prioritizes speed and entertainment, not nuance. So a 60-second video can't possibly address all that there is to address in as far as tailoring a financial plan. Which brings me to my next point of one size does not necessarily fit all, especially in financial planning. Advice like buy the stock now or crypto is the future, it doesn't consider your personal situation at all.
It's important to note, it's a very good point, important to note also that social media influencers are remunerated through engagement. So then they might know their advice is wrong, it's purely to get engagement. And as such, we have provided a few questions for anyone that is looking to get advice from social media. And those questions you need to ask yourself is, who is giving the advice? How do they know this? Are they professionals? Do they have experience with the product that they are potentially promoting? Is this person's situation similar to mine? Are they affiliated to a legitimate organization? In other words, do they represent a company that allows them to give advice on social media? Are they recommending products that they've tried themselves, like, for example, cryptocurrencies? And will buying this product they're selling give me a return on my investment? Or is it potentially a scam, which we have seen earlier from the release from the National Prosecutors Authority? So these are sort of things that one needs to be aware of when you are engaging with social media.
Absolutely. The third myth we'll address is financial planning is only for the wealthy. And this one breaks my heart because it is so important for everybody to understand that it does not matter who you are, where you come from, how much you earn. For as long as you have money and you need money, you need to engage a financial planner on how to maximize your money as your life progresses.
And the reality with having a financial planner at all levels is that you need to be able to achieve financial goals, starting off small and gradually building those goals as you accumulate wealth throughout your life. You can't view it as a person building up all their wealth and then only going to go and seek a financial planner, because it actually might be too late. And there was a statistic that was recently on a previous slide that only 37% or 32% of South Africans have a financial advisor aged between the 18 and 49 age bracket, which simply means that there is a lack of financial planners that are allocated to investors to help them. And some of these statistics, sorry, let's go to the previous slide. One important statistic here is that according to a study, individuals with a financial planner are 2.5 times more likely to save enough for retirement, because it provides you with a roadmap for you to be able to understand how much must I put away, how long must I put away, and what investment vehicle must I put the money into to be able to achieve that.
Absolutely. And so we bring your attention to the power of small, consistent savings over time. This graph basically demonstrates how you can start with very little, and by the power of compound interest, you can actually end up retiring comfortably or saving comfortably towards wealth throughout your life. There really are no shortcuts to accumulating your wealth. It requires discipline, and it requires small steps, and it requires constant review to make sure that you are contributing what you need to reach your financial goals.
No better example of this is the investor Warren Buffett, who has not only started his financial journey with a small amount of wealth which he accumulated throughout his life, but also chose the delayed gratification of saving money throughout his life, building up assets with his business, and not be tempted to have instant gratification when it comes to spending his money. And he's a person that's always heavily believed in long-term saving, long-term value, and long-term gains of investing in the stock market so that you can build wealth through compound interest and being committed to an investment goal. So this is a nice example of someone that one could look at in terms of following his advice, because he's a very well-known investor globally for what he's accomplished with Berkshire Hathaway.
Absolutely. And I think Warren Buffett is the epitome and personification of discipline and consistency over extended periods of time. Another misconception that we find perpetuated by the social media, for example, is that if you haven't achieved your wealth by a certain age, then you've completely failed in life. But really, wealth is an accumulation over extended periods of time. And one needs to be consistent, one needs to be disciplined, and one needs to continually review their financial circumstance to ensure that they're optimizing it.
Right, going on to myth number 4. Financial planners don't add any value. They just sell insurance and charge fees. And this is another common myth that we do find within the financial services industry. And that's perception of financial planners not only value, and which has led to a further increase in DIY investing.
Absolutely. The truth is, a qualified financial planner is not a salesperson. We are strategic partners with you in your life planning, because your finances affect your whole life. And that's why financial planning should be a cornerstone of everybody's finances. The stats read that over 8 in 10 clients agree that financial advice has brought more value than it costs. Just looking at cost efficiency, financial planning can be affordable, with many advisors offering very flexible fee structures. It is up to somebody to actually explore which fee structure would be best fitting and most suitable for their financial circumstance. And of course, it is in the interests of a financial planner, a certified one at that, to act in the best interests of your clients. So you could be rest assured that when you approach a professional, they will ensure that the costs are most effective and efficient for your financial circumstance.
That's very true. And also it's important to note that the value that financial planning brings to clients is really the client satisfaction. And on the next few slides, we're going to just show you some examples of value done through surveys. But firstly, let's do an example here of an investor trying to invest himself or through the guidance of a financial planner. And we've used hypothetical scenario of R1 million invested over 10 years, where we're looking at the compound annual return of 7 and 10%. So we can see that if a person did a DIY investment plan and they invested for 10 years, the expected compound or future value for 10 years of 7% would be 1.967 million. And if the guidance to a financial planner and they were able to achieve an additional 3% compound return over the same period, we're looking at 2.593 million. So that might not seem like much on paper, but when you actually work out the difference, you're looking at 31.86%. And that's where the value can come in from financial planning, because financial planners do have the experience, they have the knowledge and insights that a client might not have. And as a result, they can justify the value through consistent long-term returns of outperforming what they would normally do if they were to do it on their own. This slide talks to the survey that was done in 2018, and the survey was done by Vanguard, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. They have 10.4 trillion of assets under management with over 50 million clients worldwide. And the survey that they'd done was to determine what percentage of their clients value the advice when it comes to certain variables. And the variable that had the biggest weighting in terms of customer satisfaction was the relationship with the trusted expert. And this outweighed the planning, which is the 7%, which just goes to show that clients are getting additional value from their advisor, not only in taking care of them and guiding them, but also giving emotional support in terms of managing their finances, looking after their family, being there for them when times are tough, when you're going through difficult periods such as the passing. And as a result, that's how they've seen the value of an advisor, which certainly outweighs the cost of having that advisor look after their portfolio.
Absolutely. And this really speaks to and combats the belief that one can manage their own finances through the likes of AI and robo investing, because, those sort of systems and that kind of technology cannot manage emotion, which is exclusive to humans. So it's important to understand the emotional intelligence that is involved in financial planning and, strategy that is involved over a long period of time.
Additional survey that was done was through the Financial Planning and Boards, which is essentially the global standard for financial planning. And what they did was they came to South Africa and did a sample size of just over 1,000 people. And they started to quantify the value of advice by looking at the quality, the financial confidence, the financial satisfaction and experience. And they measured it against those who were unadvised, those who were other advised, and those who were advised by a certified financial planner. And what they then did was they then calculated a delta to determine how much can a certified financial planner add to the value proposition to clients of the financial planning. And as you can see, the delta in certain areas is up by 5%, which is the quality of life. I think that's very important to note, is that the quality of life for people is what we're all looking for, is you want to have the financial freedom, as I mentioned earlier. You want to be able to have peace of mind knowing that I'm working with a professional that can help me accomplish my goals over the long term, and that I can go to them for emotional support to assist with any financial planning decisions. And you can see by that delta that has the biggest impact on clients compared to, say, experience. So the point I make it is that clients are looking for that human element, which you cannot necessarily get from artificial intelligence or from robo-advisors.
And so in exploring the financial planning process, it is important to be cognizant of the steps involved in the financial planning process, which aren't necessarily carried out by individuals that are doing their own financial planning. These 7 steps are provided by the Financial Planning Standards Board, which is a global standard setting body for the Certified Financial Planner designation. And in South Africa, the FPSB partners with the Financial Planning Institute to offer the designation and uphold its standards. So just to briefly explore the 7 steps, one being to first and foremost understand the client's personal and financial circumstances. The second, to identify and select goals. The third being to analyze the client's current course of action and potential alternatives. The fourth, to develop the financial planning recommendations and solutions in as far as a long-term strategy is concerned. And the fifth is to present those solutions before then coming to the 6th step, which is the implementation of the financial plan. Now, where DIY financial planning is concerned, one typically skips the first 5 steps and jumps straight into the 6th step because they may have seen on TikTok that their favorite influencer told them to buy a particular stock or to invest in a type of cryptocurrency, for example, just by virtue of consumption of any and every type of information that is put in front of you on your cell phone. People statistically jump straight to step 6, not interrogating their financial circumstance through steps 1 to 5. And lastly, the 7th step is to monitor the progress and update the plan habitually, as the plan that maybe have been set years ago may not speak to one's circumstance as it stands today. Life is constantly changing. Our financial circumstances are constantly changing. And so it is important to monitor progress and to adapt it where necessary to ensure that the financial plan is consistently optimized for market volatility.
This slide, we'd like to look at the outcomes essentially of the professional financial planning advice. So in summary, what we'd like to just conclude is that having professional financial advice allows a person to tap into expertise, knowledge, and objectivity, a personalized financial planning and tailored solutions, which ties into the 7 steps of financial planning, looking at an investment strategy, portfolio management, and optimization of returns, tax and estate planning, which is very important because everyone needs that, behavioral coaching and emotional support, which ties into the surveys that we have shared, and lastly, the peace of mind and financial freedom, which is what everyone is really trying to aspire to throughout their working life.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that a financial planner doesn't just help grow your money. That is one aspect, but really it's the most critical aspect to help you living a better life, to help you making a better decisions, to help you avoid regret, and also to live with financial clarity and purpose. So we are just going to address some questions and give time to yourselves. If you feel that there's myths that we maybe haven't addressed, this is the time for you to give us those. We did receive questions during the week, so we'll briefly go through those. If there are questions that we have already addressed in the presentation, we may just skip past those in the interest of time. But yeah, please do just write to us in the chat box if there's anything pertinent that you'd like us to discuss.
Great. I will go to the first question. Eventually, we got questions up until the 19th of June, which we have addressed. If there's any further questions that we might have missed in the presentation, well, not part of these questions we're going through now, you're welcome to just give that to Rana. But I think one that we'll go through is going through DIY platforms like Easy Equities, Frank, and Centrix now. What can a financial planner do that is different, and is it more expensive to use a financial planner? Simple answer is, so firstly, what is Easy Equities, Frank, and 10X? They are DIY platforms, which is for easy access and usability. You can invest in ETFs, you can look at ETNs, you can look at stocks, or a basket of products. The main difference here is that you are required to do your own research analysis of products, asset classes, and funds. There is typically an information overload. As you've seen in the previous slides, there's been a 60% overload in some clients getting information, and you're also accountable for the performance of investments and overall outcomes of the portfolio in years to come. This doesn't necessarily mean that these platforms are bad at all. It just means that there is an additional responsibility when you are going into these platforms and not having a financial planner guide you. The cost that is associated to working with a financial planner outweighs that of the cost of working with a financial planner, but the value outweighs the cost over the long term. Reason for that is because they are accountable for the advice that they give, and also overseeing your portfolio, which includes risk cover, investments, savings, retirement savings, tax, and estate planning.
Yeah. The next question is, what is the percentage you get more on your return on investment when having an advisor than DIY or vice versa? So as mentioned in the slides, statistically, one tends to receive more value from working with a financial advisor because, the costs are managed, tax efficiencies are taken advantage of, and the investment portfolio is optimized by really taking advantage of market movements and repositioning for market volatility. So where DIY financial planning is concerned, one may make mistakes by investing in assets that are too risky for their particular portfolio and may, in some instances, experience a loss. They may also experience a loss because they're investing in an investment product that looks good but underperforms or is not very well priced. So for their financial circumstance, for example. So it's to be cognizant of that and to make those minor changes by actually making use of somebody that is a professional to gain better financial planning optimization. One can actually achieve on average a 3 to 4% outperformance per year if they use a financial advisor and if they are diligent in having the annual reviews with their financial advisor and consistently reviewing their portfolio to ensure that it is best positioned for their financial needs and goals, as those are ever changing.
Great, thank you, Snele. So the next question we had, which I'll touch on very briefly, is that a person has asked, what is the advances of robo-advice? So I'm going to first address South Africa, which is where this presentation is obviously applicable to, but financial robo-advisors was first introduced in 2016, but it has always been limited to investing and not taking consideration the circumstances of a client, such as risk, retirement, estate planning, tax planning, etc. With the advancements of AI, there may be improvements. In fact, there's bots following this presentation, which has been timing this entire time. But essentially, there may be an evolution of robo-advisors in South Africa, but for what we have seen, it hasn't really taken off from inception. And the reason for that is because South Africans are very much relationship orientated, especially when it comes to their families. They want to meet with a person, they want to discuss their finances, they want to have emotional connection to a person when it comes to their financial planning overall. And in the United States, robo-advising has taken off quite significantly because it is a larger economy, but they do have limitations as well with the robo-advisors. And in some instances, you can engage with a robo-advisor up until a point where you've got substantial enough capital or wealth to invest, then you are then allocated to a certified financial planner then to assist you going forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. The next question we received was, how should advisors deal with clients who invest on online share portfolios such as Easy Equities? That was addressed really in the first question, but it's important to understand that Easy Equities is one platform and one component of one's investments, so to speak. So a professional financial planner would consider financial landscape holistically. So review your portfolio holistically and then make the necessary recommendations just in terms of a diversified asset allocation.
Right, this question we have really addressed with regards to the starting small and investing for the long term. The answer is there for those who want to read it. But I think I will address the question that was asked, what is a good retirement package? Meaning, what is good enough to retire comfortably and paying off your bond, buying a nice car, living comfortably? So essentially are a few good rule of thumb. So the first one is aiming for a 70 to 80% of your financial pre-retirement income per year to retain your lifestyle in retirement. Other guidelines suggest that you should save at least 50% of your pre-tax income throughout your working life. There's the 4% rule, which is also commonly used when doing drawdowns in your first year in retirement, and then adjusting that with inflation each year thereafter. And then lastly, with regards to the paid off the bond and purchasing vehicles, this is where the financial planner can add value and get a guidance on where best to spend your disposable income. Nothing beats a tailored financial plan as circumstances change from one person to another. In other words, this is where financial planners can give you value, because we can advise on which vehicle you should be looking at in terms of your budget. Does it tie into your financial plan going forward? And does it make sense to actually go this route with, let's say, for example, buying a sports car versus something that's getting you from A to B? Does it make sense financially in terms of your disposable income?
Yes. And just to add on to what Sean said, this question and the answer there too really emphasizes that one size does not fit all in as far as financial planning is concerned. So we cannot outright tell you what a good retirement package is for you without considering your circumstance in its entirety. And this is where you can find value in having a financial planner, because we can perform quantitative needs analysis to actually give you the numbers that pertain to your personal circumstance. Because what may work for you in as far as your retirement package is concerned may not work for somebody else, because their needs are entirely different. They may have more children than you. They may be taking care of families. So it's important to recognize that we cannot approach your finances with a blanket approach. One piece of advice that does not fit the vast majority of people. It is to take a tailored approach for each and every individual.
Thank you, Zanele. I think the last two questions we have really covered in terms of the importance of financial advice. Maybe Rihanna, if you've got a question, just in terms of time, we've got about 15 minutes or so. Are there any questions that have come up that we can maybe address that we haven't covered in the presentation?
Thank you, Sean. I've got one question. Which behavioral bias you think is at play when a client chooses DIY instead of financial planner value proposition?
I think looking at
I think
the
it would be
slide,
emotional. It would definitely be an emotional decision. And it could be a mixture of emotional biases as well as cognitive biases, actually.
Yeah, so
and
cognitive, I was going to say cognitive and emotional biases both impact decision making. So it's sort of a blend of both.
Yeah. And it would be a function of what that person believes about seeking out financial advice. It could be a function of maybe their parents having a very bad experience with a said financial advisor, just selling them life insurance for a commission or that was exorbitantly high. And that has now in turn been taught to them to not seek out financial advice because of that bad, misinformed experience. So these are the kind of biases that we see in play when people are a little bit hesitant to, one, be open about their finances to a financial advisor, and two, seek out advice in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Rihanna, any other questions?
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. Is there anybody that has still got a question? You can please post it in the chat and we can answer that. Let me give you a question from my side. If we look at the current state of the economy and people that is unemployed, how do we actually plan for the future in this times that we're in? People will say, but I don't really have money to plan. How do I plan?
But they do have money to plan. we all have money, and I think the volatility that we are faced with emphasizes the importance of needing to plan, because we are not certain of what the future holds. You have money to buy your food, you have money to service your needs on a month-to-month basis. That is money that you have, but all you're doing is spending it. You're not actually saving or investing it. So it's to explore what options you have available, and not to be deterred by the fear mongering from the state of the economy, because you still need to live, and you're going to live a long life statistically. So it's important that one becomes vulnerable enough to approach a financial planner despite their circumstance, despite how much they have, and put together a plan that will put their minds at ease.
To add to that also, sorry, just to add to that, is I think one would start with doing budget planning and looking at what their expenses are to see if there's opportunities for you to save money, because a lot of people don't really understand what they might be spending money on that they could potentially stop. And secondly, looking at the circumstances of a person. Are they living beyond their means? Are they living off credit cards? Are there ways to improve their lifestyle? A person might be looking at purchasing a property versus renting. What are the pros and cons? That's where a financial advisor can really add value to improve your circumstances, so that you can essentially start saving more when your salary increases, because you now know what your expenses are and how you can manage that going forward.
So, Sean, would you say that a financial advisor can help you to streamline your budget?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most important things that we would look at. Is we need to look at your budget as well as your balance sheet. We need to see what assets you have that you can invest, what assets do you have, such as property, vehicles, and things like that. We need to know what your cash flow is so that we can look at the holistic picture, because we essentially would like to do financial planning through lifestyle scenarios. We want to know, if you save this money into this investments in this type of portfolio, how will it impact your future in terms of the goals that you want to accomplish? So that's really the most important thing, is starting with the budget. Do you know what exactly the client's income expenses, and then take it from there.
Perfect. I've got a question here which says, what if ChatGPT gives you advice?
Okay, so that's a good question. So first and foremost, ChatGPT, Copilot, OpenAI, those are all learning language models, and essentially it learns from thousands of millions of prompts, and as a result, it learns through experience essentially. So if you're asking a question through AI or ChatGPT, you need to just understand that wherever it's sourcing its information from, is it coming from a reliable source? And I know that, for example, with Copilot, which is what we use, Copilot gives you links to all the sites that it has sourced the information from, so you can go and basically verify the data. But if it comes down to like calculations, etc., that's where you'll just need to make sure that you can correlate that against maybe an online calculator or through a template, whatever it is, so that you can just make sure that the numbers are in fact correct. Because the problem with ChatGPT in general, how do you know the information is correct, or if it's learned something incorrectly and it's given you an answer that might not be 100% true?
Thank you. I've got another question. It says,
to add to that, Rihanna.
Sorry, yes.
When using the artificial intelligence platforms, it's important to be cognizant of the fact that the information you get out of them is as good as your prompts. So, and your prompts are only as good as your information base. So what you get out of the artificial intelligence may be limited and may not take into account the necessary considerations holistically, given the person that you are. It also ties into the cognitive biases that you will seek out information that supports what it is that you want to believe. So when you're prompting an artificial intelligence, it may just support what it is that you want to believe. So it may just give you insights on the facts that you're looking for, but it may not necessarily give you a holistic view and interrogate and challenge your belief, because what you believe and the information you're looking for may not apply to you holistically.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next up is, do you have an example of a middle-class youth who started financial planning early and what results they could see, just to visualize the journey?
That
I
would,
don't
that
know
would
whether you want
require
to.
us to collect your personal information and actually
Yeah.
do a financial
Okay.
needs analysis and cash
Yes.
flow analysis
Yeah.
for you.
Due to
It's
the
not something
POPI
we
Act
can
and
answer off the top of
client.
our heads, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, due
So
to POPI and the client confidentiality, I mean, we wouldn't be able to share clients' portfolios, but I mean, you know, the best way to look at it is to go and look at certain case studies that have been done where they have gone and investigated certain performances from clients. But we as financial planners can't share any client information just because of the restraints. Yeah.
And I think I could also just draw your attention to this slide, which basically speaks to the power of staying invested. So you can see that this shows you how 100 Rand invested on January 1st, 2000 would have grown in different investments to the 31st of December 2022. So really the outperformance of equities relative to the outperformance of, well, the performance of bonds and cash speaks to the growth of that 100 Rand broken up into these different asset allocations. That's the only illustrative we could provide you on a general sort of basis. But if you're looking to actually have a look at what your numbers look like personally, that would require a collection of your information, of course, and that would then inform the analyses that we could perform for you potentially.
thank you, Zanele. I'm going to read this one. My experience is that financial advisors will prioritize their efforts towards clients that will give them the best commission in their practice. What about clients with limited wealth who just need advice on what money decisions they need to make about, say, needing a will or funeral cover for their family, or a simple sorry, I just lost, or a simple savings option?
There's something for everyone, and I think I want to debunk that misconception that it's geared towards people that are only wealthy or can derive the best commissions, because first of all, not all financial planning professionals work on commission. So and this is something that one needs to interrogate just in terms of the cost efficiencies of the plans presented to them. And it's also important to be aware of the fact that you can negotiate your fees as a client. You can negotiate your fees as a client. You don't need to take what is put on the table, especially if it's not financially palatable to you.
Also, just want to add on that in certain cases, I saw for another question asked that if a person is a DIY investor and they want to seek advice from a financial planner, there are certain financial planners that are fee-based where you can go and have a conversation with them just to understand your position. That financial planner could prepare a financial plan for you at a fee, and you have the option to either implement what they have recommended or you do it on your own. The point is, there is that that option to do that. Whereas going to advisor that maybe might only be doing life cover and you're looking to take out a funeral, that might not be the option that you want to go. But that's just something I wanted to mention that is available to those that are seeking advice.
Can I add to that? I think it's important for people to understand that you have got choices in this. And
Yes.
if you have a particular need, whether it is a full comprehensive financial plan and somebody to really walk a path with you, or it's just a once off, you need to seek a professional and you need to make sure that you can work with this person and they can accommodate you, and you make your choice accordingly. Isn't that true, guys?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I don't see any other questions. I think we're going to end it at that. Thank you so much to Sean and Zanele. I think this was a really informative session, and I think we got a lot of answers from this. I think mostly what I've taken from this is speak to a professional. They are professional for a reason, and they can assist you to make the best decisions for your future and make sure that you actually achieve your goals. So thank you to the team and thank you to everybody that attended our session. I trust that you found it as informative as I did, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session, which would be at the end of July. Thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, Rihanna. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.